Yeah. So our first problem is like swim in a rising water. So we are given n cross n grid, and where each of the square grid represents the elevation at that particular point ij. And note that rain starts to fall, and at any time t, the depth of the water everywhere is t. You can swim from a square to another four directionally adjacent square if and only if the elevation of both the squares individually are at most t. You can swim infinite distance in zero time, and of course you must swim. You must stay within the boundaries of the grid. You started from 0, 0. So what is the least time you will take until you reach the bottom? Yeah. So like at what do you say? So our initial matrix is like this, right? 0, 2, and 1, 3. So we'll be able to cross this two only after t is equal to 2 time, right? If we start from 0, 0, we can go in this direction also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so this will be, it will take 2 time, and it will take 1 time because you are already at 2. So this is like this, right? This is, I think, sorry. So this is the height of side view. I think they might have given something like that. This 3 and this is 0. Like 0 means base, you can see, right? So from going to here to here, it will take 2 and 1 here.
Yeah. To imagine, you can imagine all these as like pits, and
Okay,
then
yeah.
yeah, so you're filling in water, and
Mm-hmm.
so if you are at the zero, means you are at the very lowest level, that is
Yeah.
at the origin, and then whenever rain falls, so only one thing we have to be very sure, like the rain falls only on the one cell, only one cell, which is the lowest one always, right? That is the
Yeah.
way we have to imagine, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
So once
And
that cell is filled up, then only the other cells actually
gets
are
filled.
rising. Hmm. Yeah, and also if you look at the constraints, yeah, that is something interesting in that. See, so n is fine; it will be 2 to 50, whatever they are saying. It's okay. But if you look at the grid and what he talks about, the grid values, they are a permutations of 0 into n into n minus 1. So you
It's well.
won't have, yeah. So you won't have any value which is greater than the number of cells, zero based.
Oh, so if it is 3 cross 3, that means 15. You will have value up to
If it is 3 cross 3, it will be 9 minus 1. So 0 to
8.
8 only. Yeah.
0 to 8. Okay. I thought 1 to 8.
Yeah. So that is what one thing is. And so they won't be like one will be 0, another will be 1,000, even if the n is lesser than 100 or so. It won't be like that.
For that 1000 cross 1000 grid, something like. I mean,
Yeah. Then you need a bigger grid. Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
yeah. So what should be the brute force here?
Brute force.
Explore each cell or what? I mean, whenever you find any elevation, wait for that much of time so that your smaller gets filled up to that level, and then you can swim.
And brute force would be just find the smallest level first. Maybe in this case, it's the 0th position, and then fill in that value one by one every time. So because it takes 1 unit of time to fill 1 unit of cell, correct? So every
Yeah.
time just fill you with one, and then I think you don't have any other option other than looking at the neighboring cells always to see if it is reaching any of the heights, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So I think it might be more of a BFS approach only for a brute force also. I'm just thinking loud, I might be wrong. Right.
Yeah.
And then whenever you see that you meet one of the cell levels, then you consider that also, and then start exploring other cell neighbors from that cell. So again, you keep on increasing your level from the new cell what you have acquired, and you keep doing that. So whenever you acquire a new cell and you are actually filling in your pit with the rainwater for that number of units of time, you keep on counting that and keep that somewhere, so it might be a max for always, and at any point you reach the end. So you don't have to physically reach the end, because what it says is if you are somehow able to meet that end, okay,
Yeah.
the bottom right. So in that case, if you are able to find a path, then that is still okay. Means you just have to rise yourself in such a way that you meet the level of that end pit. But the only thing is, the cells in between should provide you a path.
For
There
that,
should
yeah.
be no obstruction. Yeah.
Makes sense, yeah. So for getting that minimum, you'll be using a heap, right? I
Yeah,
mean, next.
then you can do optimizations, doing better ways. Yeah, heap might be one way for sure. Yeah, there will be other ways also.
Binary, yeah.
Hmm.
And it's monotonic also in nature, right? Because initially you are at zero level. At t equal to zero, you are at zero. Now when you, t equal to two time you give, so now the whatever zero level was having that got raised up to two. So it's continuously increasing. So that monotonic nature is there in it, right? Because at time
Mhm.
equal to two, you can again travel from zero to two. Now let's say if there is another elevation of four. So by when time equal to four, a person can travel from zero to four. So that again becomes monotonic. So we can use binary search also with DFS.
Okay. So in this case, the first example, when you are rising, that rainwater is rising in cell zero, so it rises to level one. So then that means you can actually go to the cell below it also, which is of level one.
But yes, yeah,
Yeah, and
that is what.
then when you increment again by one more, so it will be two in that case. So now you will be able to go to all the three cells.
All the levels less than two. I mean,
Oh yeah,
because
less
yeah,
than or equal to two, and then
because
you
you
keep on incrementing. Yeah,
exactly. So that you can take advantage of this monotonic part
right.
to do with the
And
binary search.
also, if you look at the constraint, what it's saying is the grid values are not going to exceed the number of cells, right? So
Uh,
that will be like whenever you are able to reach the, yeah, this one, right, the second node. So
hmm,
because of that, whenever you are able, when your water rises to such a level, which is equivalent to this n raised to n minus 1,
yeah,
or maybe whatever the value is at that cell, n raised to n minus 1 cell level. So if you are able to rise to that level, so you will find a path to meet that level, right? Meet that cell.
cell given cell.
Yeah. So there should be some way to find a path.
Yeah. So it will be like you will calculate first the mid, right? And if you are able to find like this will be your zero and this will be your extreme, let's say, right? You will find some mid, right? If at mid you are not able to reach, that means why you couldn't reach, because there was something bigger elevation, right? So you need to increase your time in this side, like you need to wait for that much of time so that it will get filled and then you can cross this elevation. So you will be moving towards the right in that case. Otherwise, else left, right? The binary
Okay.
search would
So you are trying to, yeah, talk about the binary search approach. But yeah, the first approach would be just do the normal BFS, correct?
yeah,
And as you said, we can use a priority heap or so to
yeah,
always find what is the minimum level. So in the priority heap, we can, instead of using a normal heap, you can use a priority heap, priority queue, which will
yeah,
be a min heap, correct?
mhm, yeah,
And then you will always find, so you'll start with the first element, which will be 0. So when you pop out that element, you look to all its neighbors and you'll pop all those values of that grid, those values into the priority queue, right? So that will make the priority queue bring only the minimum values to the top always,
yeah.
right? So you can actually build a BFS using a priority queue.
Priority queue, yeah. This is a unique combination, BFS with PQ. And generally we go with Q.
Yeah, because here we need to find which is the lowest element always, and that is what we have to take it from there, right?
Yeah.
So this is one
Yeah,
way.
then the idea is very similar like Dijkstra's algorithm.
Well,
Yeah, that
yeah, so that is what we think, but is it really, Dijkstra is still slightly different, right?
is like single source shortest path, right? Digest.
No, I'm
right?
thinking loud because there will always be people saying that if you are using PQ and BFS, then it has Dijkstra. So is it really or not? So
There
I
in
don't know.
Digest, we also use priority queue only, right, to decide which would be the next node. I mean, which would the shortest node. Like you push all the distance from the given node, you put the distance to all the nodes, right, and you find which is the shortest one using the priority queue itself. And in a BFS fashion only, like neighboring you check, and then at the same time you also check which is the minimum. So there also we are using BFS with a PQ. That's why I think it falls into that category.
But don't we actually see Dijkstra? What we do is we take whatever the weight, current weight we have at cell,
Yeah,
and then we
this
are exploring all its neighbors. We actually try to take this cell, and then whatever the weight we have acquired between those edges with its neighbors, we add them, right?
relax
And
them
then
here.
yeah, then we put them in the priority queue, so the most optimum will keep coming up, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, it looks like that, but we are not structuring the one. We are structuring the whole implementation like a BFS using just a PQ, right? But there
So
is
in
slight difference between that.
yeah, it's bit yeah, same kind of difference you can
Is it
say
not Abhishek?
because
Yeah, Abhishek started the
because
conversation, so I just wanted to
yeah,
know from him also.
because there also we took neighboring elements only and put them into PQ.
Mhm.
Yeah, I also don't recall much like some. Yeah, Abhishek, you is don't you?
Yeah,
Yes,
so
okay, go ahead.
so anyways, we need to find such optimal time which will be minimum, and we can where we start from the rightmost, leftmost top end and go to the rightmost bottom end. Uh, so this is why if we are going with the heap approach, at each step we take the node with the minimum value in the grid. So this will make sure that when we are iterating through the lowest from the smallest uh, source, we
Mhm.
always try to choose the most optimal path, which will give us the minimum time.
Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, that makes sense. You have the implementation you want to share?
Yeah. Yeah, uh, so since we always start from the leftmost top end, we push the value of the grid at that point and the related coordinates, which is 0, comma 0. And since we need a smallest value in the grid at any instant in the BFS, we will use a mean priority queue. So this is why this is the initialization of the mean priority queue. And again, we will be needing a visited vector so that to keep track of the nodes which are already visited. And then we start doing our BFS call. We pop out the element from the top of the queue or the priority queue, and then we take the max of the total number of values which we are considering. So the reason is, if we take this example where uh, the start node is as the value 2 in the grid and our destination has 3 in the grid. So if I want to go from my start node to end node, I have to traverse this way. And then first from the leftmost top end to get to the first node, I'll have to wait for 2 seconds. Similarly, to get through the second node, I will have to wait 3 seconds. And similarly, for the largest node, I have to wait 5 seconds. So here we can see we always have to wait for the and then since the destination is has height lower than 3, so at time instant 5, this whole this whole grid will be filled with water. So we can directly go from our source to the destination node. So here, if we look at this closely, we will get to know that uh, we just need the uh, value of the grid, which has the maximum value, which is 5 here. And this is why when we try doing BFS, the we always try to pick the final answer as the maximum height of the grid at that particular index. So this is why here I was taking maximum of all the values. But since we are using a min priority queue, anyways, this value will be always the minimum one, so as to get our optimal answer, which will be the least time to get through this final index. Now, if at any point I see that I have come across my final or destination node, I just return my answer. Or even if I have already visited that node, I will just return my answer. I'll just continue in my BFS. Otherwise, I will just mark it as visited, and then I will move across all its neighboring nodes, which are 4 nodes. Uh, yeah, which are these 4 directionally adjacent squares, which will be top, bottom, left, and right. And I will check if it is valid, the coordinates are valid or not. So the is valid function just check if the coordinates are valid. If it is valid, I will just push it again in my priority queue or main priority queue. And this process will continue until we come up to the final destination index. And at last, we can just return the answer.
Yeah,
So
one. Okay. Mhm.
yeah, so this is the basic min heap plus BFS approach. And uh, this is how we can do this if we are using the heap method.
Okay. Yeah, just one thing to interrupt you. Can you go back to the drawing? Just you were showing. Okay, here. See, are these the ones what you are showing? There's values 2, 3, 5, 3. They are the levels, right?
Elevation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well,
If
okay. In
if
this
we take
case,
this matrix, if we have just 1 cross 4 matrix with these values 2,
well, I
3.
don't think so. The matrix will always be n by n.
Okay, then okay. So
Okay.
this was just a general
Okay, no problem.
example.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So also in this we won't be having any duplicates. You have this 3, 3, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
You won't have that,
Yeah,
and the values will
we can
be,
just take this as
yeah,
4.
no problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Using
because
maximum of
because
the
that
grid.
is that is really important, because I was also thinking about it. The values of
yeah,
all these grids are really the key to this problem,
yeah,
because
yeah,
if
yeah.
whatever the value as you are showing in this, the last which is 3, and if you are able to attain somehow that level, then whatever abstractions you have, if it is a grid, you will surely be able to meet that value without going across this 5. You don't have to actually jump across the 5, because there will
Yeah,
always be a path, because it's a water, no, it will find
yeah,
its
yeah.
own path. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but the given constraints which they have mentioned is not being used in our heap approach. So, yeah, in the min heap approach, we are not using the fact that the value of the grid are always in the form 0 to n cross n minus 1, and it is always a permutation of all the values. So this is why, if we look at this closely, we'll get to know that after a certain instant of time, we can always move from our source to destination. So this is why, if we plot a graph in for if f of x denotes that whether we can pass from source to destination, and it is a Boolean function. So at some particular instant of x, we'll get to know that this graph will be of the form like this. So for some values of x, for some values of time after x or equal to x, we can always move from our source to our destination node. So and since the values are always in the range 0 to 0 to n cross n minus 1. So we know what is the time limit which we need to consider here. So this can be solved easily using binary search on the given time value itself. So this is similar to binary searching on our final answer again. And then we can decide at any particular instant. If let's suppose I am at this index, I can see that I can move from my source to destination. So I can reduce my search space to this 0 to this index. Now
Okay.
similarly, if I'm at this index, I can see that here I cannot move from source to destination. So I can just reduce my search space to this one to this.
Okay.
So
So
this
this
is
is what
how,
you're trying to come up with what Shashank is saying now, right?
yeah.
So the binary
So
search. So you why we have to go that route because it will be better. It will be much better optimized than the one what we are looking for the Dijkstra or whatever you call the min heap DFS, right?
yeah, and even we are using the fact of the given constraint values.
Okay, but in the first place, why did Shashank started with the DFS? I would also like to know. So you had anything special in your Shashank?
Regarding DFS, you're saying?
No. I'm saying about the binary search.
Yeah, binary search because of this monotonic what he's saying. Like what you were saying, no, like let's say initially you are at zero, pit zero, right? Now you
Mm-hmm.
went to pit two, int equal to 2 times. So
Mm-hmm.
when you are at t equal to 2, that means for all the values lesser than equal to 2, you can easily go, right? I mean, from 1 also you can go, from 0 also you can go. So that shows a monotonic principle. Every time the graph is increasing, right? So that gives you a sense of what
Okay.
you said,
So your
increasing.
monotonicity means the same thing what he is showing here on the diagram, like the
Right.
2, then the 3, and then you are actually rising. Maybe you might go to 5 also in some cases, right? Yeah. Okay.
Because here only, let's say if t equal to 5 is done, then 2 3 anywhere you can move anytime, right? Because water level is parallel now. I mean the bar diagram what he has shown, this elevation
Mm-hmm.
at t
Okay.
equal to 5 anywhere you can move at any time, so that like you can, it's an increasing way,
Okay.
like.
That makes sense then. Yeah. Sorry,
Yeah.
Abhishek,
So
go ahead. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
if the time is 5, we can move from source to destination. Similarly, if the time is 6, again we can move from source to destination.
Mhm.
So this is the reason we can come up with the binary search approach and just binary search on our final answer itself. So I've
How does it
implemented
give
it.
the least time? Oh, because search space is
Yeah,
reduced, right?
yeah, we are reducing the search space at each of the instant.
So the
Yeah,
binary
so
search way means like you are actually trying to break down into the cells where when you'll start from the zero. Actually, it's not the cell now, right?
No,
It's
no,
more
yeah,
of
yeah,
the time based. You will be saying something like you'll start from zero to the
n
most
cross n
maximum
minus 1.
value. Okay.
Yeah. And
And
so
then
when it,
whenever at certain point, if you reach, okay, in a midpoint, wherever it might be a place where you reach. So after that, you will always be able to reach that destination, right? So
if at
therefore, we
mid,
have to
yeah,
find
yeah,
the main critical path. Oh, sorry, the threshold you have to find. That is what you're showing here, the X.
yeah.
Mhm.
so if at mid we are not able to reach, then we'll move on the right side, right? Because we need to wait for some time for water to fill, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also when left, I mean, if yeah, left it, I mean, if you can move at mid, then definitely left it.
Yeah.
All.
So if at any instant, if our given function is giving us the Boolean true value, this means that at that instant we have a positive result. So
Mhm.
we can start searching for all other results which are minimum than that particular instant.
Right.
Yeah.
So in this way, we will always fall to this position only. Since we are binary searching, so we'll always move to the threshold point where uh, the first occurrence where our given function gives us the Boolean true value will be pointed to.
Mm. And therefore, it will be more optimum because this will be almost n log n solution, right?
Yeah. If n
Sort
is
of.
the total number of index or the elements in the grid, then it will be of the form n log n.
Right, right, right. Yeah, it is okay. My bad, because we have that grid of n by n, so I
Yeah,
should not
so
say
this
that. Yeah,
one arg into c will be n here.
yeah.
R into C will be total number of nodes. So this we can consider as n. And since the total number of nodes are 50, I guess, so
Mhm.
this n value will be almost 2500.
Okay,
And
that's
log
fine.
part not to constant
Yeah,
log.
yeah. So n square, n square would be the rent 10 to the power 8. Log will be something constant term. So this will fill it in our time limit.
Yeah, but frankly, this binary search you both guys started, that is good, but it's
It's
not very intuitive, correct?
exactly, yeah. I mean, it's nowhere intuitive, right? How will
Yeah.
somebody visualize the monotonicity in that?
Well, yeah. So the thing is, there are two things. One is the monotonicity part, what you are thinking, that leads to that intuition, as well as Abhishek drawing all these bar graphs, right?
Ah,
So that also leads to that somehow.
hmm.
So I think the way more if we do whiteboarding for such problems, then only actually become I develop that intuition.
Yeah, it will remain for a long time also, pictorial.
Right. So therefore he was able to come up with this. At least means I would understand it that way. Maybe he understood
No,
it
no, no.
very easily earlier only.
I
For
think
a
he used this
Mhm.
principle somewhere also some previous problem. I don't remember. Abhishek
Mhm.
only uses monotonicity.
Okay.
One problem.
Yeah, I guess yesterday only we were binary searching on our final answer.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, so this is similar to doing binary search on our final answer itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh,
That's
so
right.
let's go with the
Please. Yeah.
implementation one. Uh, so the time will always start from 0 to the value will be always in the range n cross m, which they have already mentioned here. Now I just binary search uh, over my mid value, and before doing my DFS call, I'll just set my visited vector to 0, because after each of the iterations I have to check if my final node is visited or not. So at each of the iteration I will first set all the values to 0 in my visited vector, and now after the DFS is done, I'll check if my the rightmost bottom node is visited or not. If it is visited, I'll set my right pointer to mid. This right pointer determines that uh, this is one of the possible candidates of my final answer. And at each step, I will try to minimize my right pointer. Otherwise, if it is not visited, I will just set my left pointer to mid plus one. And at last, this both left and right pointer will merge. So I'll just return my left pointer. Uh, Now, if I go with the DFS call, this is here I pass mid value, and then I check if the coordinates which I passed is valid or not. If it is valid and my value of the grid is less than or equal to mid and is not visited, then I will first set it as visited, and then I will just iterate through all the four neighbors. And this process will repeat until at any instant either there is some blockage or we fall to the final index.
Mm-hmm.
So visited is a 2 cross 2. I mean, m
Yeah.
cross n.
Yeah, n cross m. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. See, Abhishek, here, this is a very smart approach and a very optimum, I would say, in the binary search way. So you are using DFS, but whenever you run the DFS, you don't return anything to compare with and actually move from your left search space to the right search space. But you are actually looking only for the whatever the visited of that end cell. That is the top, the bottom right one, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah.
is the one you are looking for. Yeah, but for me, yeah, it's very good for you. You can very pick up very easily these things, but it is not a standardized template that we are using for this one, correct?
You're right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So this is the most optimum way to do for sure. But if we were able to do a standardized way also, so at least for problems which are not so common, right? Then we can come to this optimize is always good. But yeah, but this is also fine. So the only thing we have to remember here is on line 55, we need to compare that condition is very important. right? To move your
Yeah, yeah.
search space. Okay.
Anyways, we were needing this visitor vector even in the the BFS one,
Mm-hmm.
since we were marking each of the nodes and then checking if we have already visited it, or also we were checking if uh, we have fall to the our destination index or not.
Oh.
So this visited was anyways needed to mark if we have already visited or not a given node. Otherwise, it will keep iterating through, and this will give us a time limit exceedable.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, if you don't use a visitor, right? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No worries. Yeah. This is a good one. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, do we have a Shashank?
Yeah, I have same only, like almost whatever is it. This is like your priority queue approach, right? I'm using a max CPL.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the length of your grid, and what I'm pushing in my priority queue, the grid, I mean the
Mm-hmm.
element at that particular 00 and its coordinate, and this
Mm-hmm.
is your keeping track of visited, like 00 coordinates we have visited. And now
Mm-hmm.
this is an infinite loop. So we pop out from here and we take the t.
Mm-hmm.
T is your that particular element, and x and y the coordinate, right? And just in your max result, you always keep on updating the max value. Since there is no min heap in Python, we could have used minus by putting if I have to go min heap, but this via max heap, right? And this is like once you are reached to the x, I mean to your final result, x and y both are equal to n minus 1, then you return this. Else you go, explore all the four directions and just check that you should not go outside the boundary and they should not be visited. Then you, if it's not visited, first time you're visiting, you put it into your scene set and then push it back to the queue, that particular ij element and what is the coordinate of it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Okay.
it will
So,
keep
so this is almost the similar what we call the Dijkstra sort of way, but yeah.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. No worries. Well, okay. In that case, what I will do is I will actually share my solutions also,
Yeah, yeah,
because I
sure,
would
sure.
like to, the way Abhishek did was the very optimized version of that. So I'll try to go the normal version way.
Hmm.
Okay. I just want to, you know,
Yeah, yeah.
so
That
it
binary.
is good
Yeah.
for me also. I will also remember in long term.
No, no, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is that binary one. So most of the thing what he is doing exactly the way I'm doing it. It's nothing different. Okay. So this is my left pointer. This is my right pointer. Okay. And this is some answer variable which I'm just setting it to the high. Okay. We'll come to that later because I'm just looking at the minimum always with the answer. So this is the binary search. Just finding the midpoint here. Okay, and this is that visited array. Okay, and here I'm doing the templatized version, the normal binary search way, because I'm just passing any function and whenever it returns true. Okay, so then it means that I'm able to reach with this mid. So there is a potential chance that I could find something much better, right? So therefore I change my R. Okay, in that case. Okay, I'm using L is less than or equal to R. Therefore, you see R is equal to mid minus 1 and L is equal to mid plus 1. Okay. So that is
Yeah.
a one binary template, search template what
Standard.
I'm using. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
So if I find this is like an okay function for me for now, if it
Mhm.
returns true, then actually I move my R from means I actually change my search space to the left search space.
Left
Yeah,
side, yeah.
right.
So you're reducing the time at that point.
Yeah. So
Mm.
this for me actually I follow the very simpler one. Yeah, but
Exactly.
it won't be
More
the
it-
most
yeah.
optimized way, but this is one way. And the DFS is almost the same, the normal DFS what we do, but only different thing is because this is the limit or whatever the midpoint what I'm passing here, and I'm just adding one additional check over here. If my grid values are greater than the limit, I don't want to visit those, so I return false from here. Okay, so because it won't even go right, because that is what the DFS will be, because my current limit is smaller and if my grid is greater then you should not. So it will keep doing this value, the DFS, the way he was doing.
Yeah, the normal, you are checking the boundaries, and then if it is
Yeah.
less than
So
takes the
rest
step.
of the whole DFS will be the same thing. It's nothing different. And also at the end, if I'm able to reach within this limit, the end of that the bottom right, then I'll return true, or else everywhere it will be returning false. So this true condition is only if I actually am able to achieve this one. Correct. So this
And
is the normal DFS way. And one more way, it was mentioned in the solution. Therefore, I would like to show that also. They also mentioned that we can use a union find.
yeah, I was seeing that, but I couldn't
Oh
get.
no, actually, it's very good. We should not really give more stress on that because I really found it is not very efficient the way we did for the binary search. The binary search is the most best way to do it, but it was mentioned there, so I just thought of going through it. Okay, so this is the normal union find class. Okay, so you have all these parent, then you have this find, and then you have this merge, right? Or the union, whatever you can call that. So this is the standard DSU. Um,
Path
Database
compression also
generally.
you are using, right?
Yeah, yeah, I've used everything there.
Uh,
So this is the DSU what I'm initializing with the rows columns, and then here, and then what I do is I have to do some additional things also here. That is what I think it is not so much efficient. So you have to actually sort all these values of the grid values. Okay, so this way you put them in an array, and in the array, so the grid value along with its coordinate, and then you sort them. Okay, so you sort them, so you'll have an ascending order, right? So instead of using the way we are using a priority queue which was doing all this job, so this is something what additional thing we have to do here. And then now this array which will be our one what we will be traversing for a DSU. Okay,
mm,
so in the DSU, every time you have this start will be 0, and your end will be the end, whatever that rows into column -1, that is a bottom right one. So you just check if they are connected or not. If they are not connected, then you keep going in your DSU and start uniting them. Okay, so every time your answer, you'll start from -1 actually. Fine, because if you are not going in this, so you return -1 from that. That is one of the reason. And this will actually keep on increment every time at a step, one time at a step, 1 unit time. Okay, so then you actually look for the values which are at the in the V. Every time you get only the coordinates of it, and look for all the fours. Okay, and then you can find, when you find those four, you check their validity. And if your grid values, the current ones what you're finding, they are lesser than this one, then only you merge them.
at this point,
Okay,
yeah.
yeah, so if you keep merging, and then if you look if it is connected, then only you come out of the loop and return. But the time complexity also, if you look LeetCode, it is like 20 milliseconds, something like that, or 28. And but if you look for the binary search, it is like 8 milliseconds. So therefore, yeah, I would always prefer that. But it was mentioned in the solution, so I thought maybe let's go through it, have
Yeah,
just a
yeah.
quick walkthrough. Yeah,
This
but
one.
I frankly I also struggle to understand why they are using this way, but it makes sense because your V is always sorted, right?
Yeah.
And also, if you look at this constraint, and also what Abhishek and you both were mentioning, it's a monotonicity, right? And also the values are only going to be from this one, so then it makes sense, right? So whenever your answer reaches the value of like this 6, okay, but while reaching the 6, you have to find a path, and therefore you always keep looking for this path, right? But in this case, in our case, what happens, 16, if you are able to cross the 16, so we don't have to cross the values which are 17, 18, 19, 20, because we are able to find a path like this, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so that is one of the reasons. So if you reach 16, then in that case your DSU will be connected, so your start and end will meet some or the other way. because you'll find a path in a DSU also. So 6
then,
will be somehow connected to 0 in that
hmm,
case.
yeah.
So therefore it makes sense, but took some time for me to understand. But yeah, so what we are doing with the binary search is the most best way of doing it.
Your binary search.
Yeah.
Heap binary search, and then you will find it.
Yeah, heap is the at least we should be able to get that right. So that is
Yeah.
very at least it's okay. You know, it's more easy to come up with now. The
Heap
binary search is not so easy, but when you both guys were explaining, yeah, then it makes sense.
binary search. Yeah, that's. We'll have to get used to that binary search. That what is it? Finding such patterns like virtual. Although array is not sorted, somehow find monotonicity, and then we can use it.
Yeah, if there is a monotonicity, yeah, then it makes sense.
Mhm.
But it's really hard to visualize it.
Yeah. So this is like another. We have to find minimum flips to make A or B equal to C. So three positive numbers are there. Return minimum flips required in some bits of A and B to make this. Flip operation consists of any single bit change 1 to 0 or 0 to 1. So here like we can see, here, C is 1, right? And it's an OR operation. So one of the bits has to be made to 1. So one change here. And after this, here your C is 0. So if C is 0 and it's an OR operation, both of them has to be changed to 0 0. Then only C will be 0. So total three operations, three flips are being made, right?
Mm-hmm.
First one. So that we have to return here. Three.
Here, I can explain
Sure,
this,
sure. Go ahead.
Susang, if you want.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, take your. Let me go ahead.
All right. So just like what Susang said, right? On this example as well, where we need to find minimum flips. Now, flips means basically converting 1 to 0, 0 to 1, and counting how many flips we're doing. So on this example, 265, we're doing 3 flips because 0 we're turning into 1, 1 0, 1 0, flips 3. That's why we're turning 3. Um, Now, before we dive into question, let's understand because we're using this OR operator. So I just want to go through this. OR operator on this case is 0 or 0 is 0, 0 1 is 1, 1 or 0 is 1, and 1 or 1 is 1, right? So now what I did on my solution was I first initialized my flip to 0, right? And then I said, okay, on my while loop, if A is not, I'm bringing everything down. I'm bringing my int ABC down to 0. And then at each loop, what I'm also checking the lowest significant bit of every single integer, right? And this will give me the LSB. When I say LSB, for example, on this binary number, the MSB would be 0 on the left corner. On the MSB will be 0 on the left corner, and the LSB will be 0 on the right corner. So this is the LSB, right? And this will give me that LSB for every single integer. And I store them in LSB-A, LSB-AB, and LSB-C, right? Now this is the important logic that's doing the work, and I'll explain you this logic, and it'll be easy. If we go up, right? Now, remember I explained to you what the OR operator is. The reason I did that is because we need to understand this to understand this. Now, if you look at it, right? So even now, compare this example as well. Now, okay, here I already have LSB A, B, and C, right? So my A, B, and C. So basically, we have two conditions. Either A can be 1 and 0, or B can be 1 and 0. 'Cause it's all binary, right? So A and B. So on this case, it was all 0 0. Now, our goal is to make whatever A and B is, if we do an OR operator on that, so A or B has to be C, right, for the LSB case. Now, if you look at it, when C is 0, right, when does C becomes 0? C, no, now, say, so when A is 1 and B is 1, then we need to flip 2 times. Why? Because uh, A is 1, B is 1, right? And if C was 0, then we need to flip both A and B, right? That's why I put in 2. And when A is 1 and B is 1, then we need to flip only 1. Why? because if if C is 0 in this case, right? So if either of these are 1 and 1, then we only need to flip one of them, either make this 0 or make this 0. So in either case, we're only flipping 1. When when A or B is already 0, then C is 0. That's why I didn't even check that, because if they're both zeros, then it's guaranteed that C is 0. That's the condition when C is 0. Again, C can either be 0 and 1, right? It's a binary. Now, when C is 1, let's check. A is 0 and B is 0. So when A is 0 and B is 0, right? Now we only need to flip 1, because if both are 0, if I make a one of them 1, then the result would be 1, right? Now these other two cases, when if either of them are 1 and 0, then both of them equal to 1. So I don't even need to check that, right? Same thing over here. If both of them are A and B are 1 and 1, then the result is still 1. That's why I didn't even check all three conditions on the C equals to 1 case, right? So that's the logic behind it. All I did was I just copy pasted that logic right here on my LSPA. So if this is my C, if LSP is C, then do this, right? The same logic as above. If LSB is 1, then do that in the same logic as above. On the bottom, all I did was I did a right shift, bitwise shift by 1. So basically, when I say bitwise shift, all I'm doing is if we look at this binary number 0010, if I do right shift by 1, this 0 cuts up on the right and it goes to the left. So it'll be 0001. So and also one thing to understand is every bit shift to the right by 1 divides the number by 2, so eventually it's going to be 0, right? And that's when the loop stops, right? It's one of that's when all of them will be 0. That's where the loop stops. And at that point, all we need to do is return the flip, and yeah, and time and space will be O of 1, because int, it's a 32-bit, and that concludes the solution.
So
Yeah.
yeah, what did you say about the time complexity?
O of 1.
Okay, yeah.
Login it should be, no?
No, because I mean, yeah, I thought about it too, but like
Yeah,
at the end of the
log,
day, it's 32
log
bits.
of max of A comma B comma C base 2.
Yeah. Because whenever
So
bits
that's a
come,
debatable, yeah. But what he's saying is also right. What you guys are saying is also right?
but
Yeah, the value will be always in range 0 to 32. So we can either take it as a constant value, or we can just say it as log of the maximum out of ABC.
Yeah,
makes sense, yeah.
yeah. Both should be fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
I have a
that's
question.
Mhm.
How did you came up with this or in the while loop? Like if A or is not equal to 0 or B is not. Oh, so it's not. But then if one of them becomes 0, then you will exit the loop, right? Then why there is or?
Exactly. So the goal is basically make everything at the end, make everything 0, and that's when my loop ends. Other than that, we have to keep on
But
checking
then
how
this,
many flips we're
but
doing.
then this or makes it exit early also, right? So if A becomes 0 and B, C didn't become 0, then it will still exit, right?
No, it will go
No.
inside. It's the or condition, right?
Yeah.
I mean, had it end, then only it will exit. If one of
Oh,
them becomes 0, yeah. It's a or.
Yeah.
Any one of them is true, it will end. Keep
So
on
if you actually make this whatever that not common, then all the ors will become and, right, inside.
and not you take outside. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
good way, yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna stop my share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chapal. Yeah.
Mhm.
So I did it in the opposite way. Since we know that the values is in the range 1 to 10 to the power 9, so it will always lie in the range uh, 0 to 2 raised to the power 32, which means we have it
Oh, Abhishek,
bits
you are not
to,
sharing, I think.
Yeah, screen you're not sharing.
yeah. So we have only 0 to 32 bits to check from. So what we can do is at each of the instant, we can first raise a number raised to the power the bit number, and then we can just AND it with the given value. So when we AND it with the given value, if that particular bit is set, which is what we need at each of the iterations in all the three numbers. So for example, if I need if I need to count the bit is set or not in A at position 0, or the first bit is set or not. So I will first find a value which will have 1 at the particular bit which I have to check. So this is same as raised to the power 2 that particular index value, and then I can just AND it. So if I have to check if let's suppose, yeah, if I have to check if this particular one is set or not, I can just use another number which will have only this bit as set and all other bits set to 0. And then I can just AND both these numbers. So when I do bitwise AND, I'll get some values like this, which is 0. Yeah. So here I will get some non-zero value. But imagine if this was a 0, then if I do a bitwise AND here, then I will get a a 0 value. So this is how we can check if a particular bit is set in a given number at a particular index or not. So this is what I am doing. I am iterating to 0 to 32, which gives us which bit I need to check at any particular instant, and then I raise the power. I raise the number, or I just left shift 1 that many number of times, and then I just bitwise AND it with the given number itself. And then I check if it is greater than 0. This means that that particular bit is set. And then if, after I get all the values, which determines if the value is set or not, I can just check if either this value is 0 and both or any of this bit is 1. So I just need to add either 1 or 2 in my final answer. So the reason is if we check this second bit in C, which is 0 here, both these bits are 1 or set 1 in A. So I need to add both these ones in my final answer. Or even if there was 1 0 here in C and either of this was 1 and other one was 0, so I had to add 1 in my final answer. So I'm just adding the sum of both these checks, and if either the bit is set in 1 and none of the bits is set, then I can just add 1 in my final answer, and then I can just return the answer.
Yeah, yeah. So this also, okay, so you are also actually using a mask, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and only the thing what you are doing differently is you are actually extracting it using that mask.
Yeah.
And it's splitting it on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is just this line 9 to 11 is just checking if the particular bit is set or not, which we often use even in bit manipulations if we want to check if that particular bit is set or not in a single line. So this
And
is
you are
this
moving
we can
also.
use.
By doing right shift, you are moving also, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, so this is a perfect explicit way of doing it, correct? Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see you have one more implementation. So is that the most optimized version?
No. Anyways, we need either way we need to iterate through all the bits in the given number itself. So the complexity will be anyways the log of the max of ABC. So the implementation won't differ in any of the cases, since the complexity has to be the total number of bits present in the number.
Right. But still, what you could do is, okay, so now if you have this A and B, correct? What you can do is you can find the difference, okay, only the bits which are different.
Yeah.
Did not. So what you can do is you can
Yeah.
actually OR A and B and then XOR with C. Okay. So
Yeah.
whatever the bits which are said will be the difference. And then you can only
So
check those
yeah.
those bits, then it will be slightly efficient way of doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So first we bitwise OR it, then we will get all the ones values, and then when we XOR it, all the ones which are present both in C and the bitwise OR of A and B would be set to 0. So this means that we don't have to flip that particular bit, but if either of one is 0 and C, the bit in C is 1, or even in the bitwise odd is 1 and in C it is 0, this means that we have to flip that bit. So we just need to count the total number of set bits in that number. But again, there will be one issue arising where uh, the the bit in C would be 0, but both the bits in the A and B would be set to 1. So in that case, again, so to check that condition, again we just need to AND A and B with the previous value. So this will make sure that only those bits are set where the bit is set to 0 in C, and both the bits in 1 and both the bits in A and B are set to 1. So A and B will always give me uh, only ones, which only ones at those bit where 1 is present in both A and B. Yeah, so here it will give me this value, and then when I AND it with this value, uh, which was giving me the number of flips in the previous operation which we performed. So when I AND it with this number, there I will come to know that either of one of the bits is set to 1, but in C that bit is already set to 0. So this means that I have two bits to flip here. So here we can just count those number of flips by just counting the number of set bits.
Perfect. Yeah, correct. That's the way. Only we have to differentiate whether the bit is 0 or 1.
Yeah, but even this built-in pop count in C++ is same like iterating through all the 32 bits. So the overall complexity will be same, but since we are doing 2 pass here, so this for loop will be done twice in
Yeah.
the.
Okay. So in that case, what you could do, in this for loop itself, we can always check for all these whatever we are doing the operations. Only do when we have a difference in our bit when we XOR with the C and OR with AB, right? So at least
Yeah,
that some optimizations will do. And if we have done completed with all our diff bits, we can actually early exit. A very
yeah,
small optimization. I know it's not going to be, because if you're at the 32 bit, you still have to go through all of them
yeah,
in
yeah,
worst case, right? Yeah,
yeah.
makes sense.
So this is why that while loop implementation is little bit optimized than this one, since in while loop we just iterate through the max number of bits present in either of A, B, and C. But here we just set the max to be 32.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, and it uses that OR operator. So as soon as one of them is 0, it just exits the loop and
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
returns the flips. Yeah.
Because this question is medium, and
This is not more. I mean, that one is more intuitive, right? The normal what Shuffle was saying, right?
Yeah, that's why I
Right.
did that, because for me, like if someone will ask me that in an interview, that's
no,
I just
that's
want
perfect.
something. Yeah.
That's perfect, because that is the way we have to start with for sure. But if it's a medium sort of problems, they would sure they are expecting something,
Unique.
optimizations more better.
Yeah.
Till the lowest level you can go in the optimization. That is the best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, at
Right.
least we should be discuss more.
Prepared.
At
Yeah.
least we
Yeah.
understand and uncover a lot of stuff, right? Yeah. So with the way Abhishek is saying, when you do this A or with XOR,
Mm.
whenever your bit which is set in C, which you have a difference of bit, and if it is set in C, okay, if it is 1, so you have to take different actions. And if it is set to 0, then you just have to increment with 1,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Mm.
that is one small trick what he's doing on line 13. In that case, he's just increasing his answer by 1. So it means that the bit is actually 0 in that case, right? No, it is 1 in that case. Yeah. C bit is set in that case.
Mm.
So those small things really sometimes matter. Yeah. But that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Abhishek and Safal. Yeah.
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 Shashank, do you want to share yours?
Mine is same like what Safal shared.
Okay.
Like Safal and Abhishek was sharing. Like you just calculate the set bits, and there are two conditions, right? When x or y not equal to z, or it can be equal to z, right? So if it is not equal to z, that means what? If both of them are one and c is zero, that means what? Both of them you need to flip to zero. Otherwise, it's only one flip, right? And just you move every time to the left. Like this way, I'm going from right to left and return the.
But in this line number 11, what
Yeah.
if your only one of them was one? Is it not?
You are saying x is
Oh,
one.
oh, then you come to this count. Okay, so my bad.
Count.
Yeah, then you come to this 13, 14. Yeah. Okay, no issue. You take care of it. Yeah.
Yeah, then we can
Yeah,
switch
no
to
problem.
next.
Let's move to the next.
So this is like a maximum average subarray one. So you are given an array consisting of n integers. Find the contiguous subarray of length k that has maximum average, and you need to output the maximum average value. Yeah. So this subarray will give you the maximum average, right?
Yeah. So does this look like a running sum?
Prefix sum, yeah, running sum, yeah.
Yeah, prefix sum, running sum.
Mhm.
Hmm. The only thing is if we have a float value, so that becomes because we have to return the float value, right? So because float values have some error corrections always after the decimal portion.
Yeah.
So yeah, the example one shows whatever the values are, they are fine. They don't create those issues, but there might be some values which we might have to handle in the float, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So if we compare, very closer values, even they are equal, they are not really equal to the last decimal value, right?
So 0.70 and 71 something. I mean, very clear.
Yeah,
Second decimal.
if you have the after decimal value, if you
Okay.
have a very big number, right? So in that case, it won't converge,
Yeah.
because you approximate them. Yeah,
And
Mhm.
also there's
Yes.
negative too, so we gotta be careful with the negatives.
right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Yes, so this is why we don't perform the division at first. We just try to maximize our continuous sum. And
And
then
then
if
uh-huh.
our sum is already maximized, then when we divide it by k, either way it will be maximum only.
Correct.
because
Yeah,
of
Yeah, that's
that
prefix.
good.
makes sense.
So
Yeah,
we can get rid of the floating point precision as well.
correct. Yeah. So that is the only way we would do this sum, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, we can use a simple sliding window, but it's not going to be efficient. What Abhishek said would be more efficient, doing the division at the very end. Yeah.
right. Yeah, but the way Shashank is showing here, he is also doing almost like a sliding window. Is it not, Shashank? If
Yeah,
I
I'm
understand
taking.
your Python implementation.
Yeah. I think you are correct only. We are taking prefix sum at line number 3 and putting it as a maximum, and then we go from. I mean, these many iterations you will take less because I
Hmm.
mean, if you are at here, you don't need to go further.
Yeah.
And I'm just reducing the I minus one from it and adding the I plus k minus one, and whichever is maximum, you update it, and at last we just divide them.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's
you're
just,
basically subtracting your window left. Um, whenever the k, whenever your index is greater than or equal to k.
okay, yes.
Hmm. Yeah.
Then
Yeah,
the question
whenever.
reduces to finding the max sum contiguous subarray of size k.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is that one.
Yeah. And then at the end, you just use that as a wrapper. Okay, or maybe that function and just return it by dividing the key.
You want to share shuffle, Abhishek?
Yeah, I can share my sliding window.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the brute force one would be we always set the first index and then keep track of the k elements sum, and then we take the max of all those subarrays.
Yeah.
So that would be
Oh,
brute
okay.
force one,
I did the
Uh-huh.
n
brute
cross
force
k.
one. Yep, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah,
Brute force solution.
no, this is the optimized one. In
Right.
brute
Yeah,
force, we will have a nested loop.
Oh,
generate
Yeah.
all possible
So
subarrays.
that will be n square, right?
N square.
No, n cross k, since we just
N
need
cross.
k values.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. So for K, that will be a second loop for K. Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, yeah.
So here I just made it very clear, what I'm doing. Okay, max average, that's the minimum. Since the reason it's minimum is because the example doesn't say it's a negative, but somewhere in there. Yep, the given array is in the range of
Minus
minus
10,000.
10,000. So that's why I said, you know what, give me the most negative value for my max average at first. And then I'm putting a double just for the same reason, because they're float, right? So double take care of everything. And for my variable, I said it's a window right. So my right pointer actually goes to the right. And at first my left, I didn't say left pointer over here, but I could. But basically we have a left pointer right here. And then I kept track of my sum, right? I'm sliding it, sliding it. And any point I said, okay, if window right is greater than or equal to, this is a tricky, this is actually one of those things we use every time on a sliding window. Windows right is greater than or equal to k minus 1. So I'm saying, okay, every time if, so let's say window right is 0, 1, 2, 3. So that means we have 4 elements now. If it's, so that means now it hits this condition, right? Window right is greater than equal to 3, then give me the average, okay, whatever it is until now, store it on my max average, store it over in this variable. Then what you do is subtract the window left, which is there, current sum minus nums window right, subtract. So this actually becomes window right is at what, 3. So this would be 4 minus 3. So 3 minus 3 is 0. So that's why window left is over here. Subtract this from here. Now look at this, similarly. Okay, store the maximum. Okay, get rid of this. Now look at this, right? And at the end, just return the max average. That's it. Sliding window.
Yeah. So this is a sliding window template, the standard one.
Yep,
Right?
standard.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Yep. Cool.
So I will just share my
Sure. Yeah. Go ahead.
prefix sum implementation, and then so first we can start with the brute force one, and
Yeah.
then to further optimize it, we can use a prefix sum a container which will store our prefix sum, and then it will always give us the prefix sum from 0th index, and then we can start iterating from our kth index and keep taking the prefix sum of only k elements. So if we are at the first kth index, we just take the given prefix sum only. But if we are beyond our kth index, we will first take the actual value and then subtract the all the values which are not included in the k elements. So this is how we do it, and then we just take the maximum of all the values, and then at last we can just return the we first typecast it to double and then we divide it with k. Otherwise, since both these are integer primitive data types, so this will return an integer value. So this is why first we type time complexity of using a extra open space here. So to get rid of this, we can just use a sliding window approach where we just keep track of the k element sum. So first we find the sum of k minus 1 elements, and then we start iterating through the kth element to the last element. Now first I add it to my current sum, and if the index is greater than k, then I subtract my the left pointer of the sliding window. And then if I am present at the kth index itself, I'll first take it as my current sum. Otherwise, if I am beyond my kth index, I'll just take the max sum of the current sum or the previous sum which I took. And then similarly, I can just return the typecasted max sum divided by k. So here we just optimize our prefix sum approach by using the sliding window and get rid of the extra linear space.
Yeah.
Yeah, you see. Typical
So yeah, this is the
static.
optimized version. Yeah, the sliding window way. And then you are not actually dividing, you are only dividing at the very end when you
Last.
return it. Okay.
Yeah. So a division is a costly operation. So this will increase our time complexity. And again, since we are at each step, if we divide and take the maximum, then there can be some precision issues arising for the floating point. So to
Right.
get rid of it, we can just take the maximum sum of the k elements, and then at last we can just divide it with k.
Perfect. Yeah, makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you, Safal
Yeah.
Abhishek.